So to the Adventure Jogger is brought to you by Andrew Mitchell, Robert B. Money Brooks, Tracy Showerman, and Robbie Gannon, and the rest of our awesome Patreon supporters. And of course, this wouldn't be anything without you, the listener. The Adventure Jogger, a podcast about trail and ultra running. Meet fascinating runners from the front, middle, and back of the pack, sharing inspiring and funny stories about life and running. Running should be fun, and so should running podcasts. I'm your host, Stephen Kornhaus, and this is The Adventure Jogger. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Adventure Jogger. Hope you may be on a long run right now, getting some miles, and thanks for taking us with you in your ears today. Today on the show, I've got a really awesome guest who has done something just very inspiring and has led to what I've seen in my research, just kind of changing people's lives. And really excited to have Alex Gold on the podcast today to talk about the Run Club and things he started. So welcome, Alex, to the Adventure Jogger.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and really appreciate your interest in the program.
Yeah, I think I first saw somebody reached out to me on Facebook. It might have actually been Joe, Joe Bodner, I believe, might have sent me a message and said, "Hey, check this guy out and this program he did." And I looked into it and I thought, "This is amazing. Like we need to talk." So are you and Joe friends, I assume, or know each other?
Yeah, Joe's kind of like the best volunteer ever. I think he volunteers for like tons of different things in the trail running community. But he's been a real big help with our program. So I didn't know he did
Awesome.
that. That's funny.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad we were able to connect. I know we had some issues with scheduling. I'm glad we're able to chat and look forward to learning more about this program. But before we get into that, I do want to kind of find out your story briefly before we get into. So maybe tell me, Alex, like how you got into running, like what led you down that path.
Okay, yeah. So when I was in beginning high school, I was a basketball player, but I didn't have a fall sport. And my brother was really good at track. Not as much cross country, but he did it. Um, and so we had a great coach, and I was like, okay, I'll sign up for that. And then I ended up just loving it so much. And my coach kind of convinced me, he's like, hey, you could be really good at this, but you kind of got to do it all year round. So I never ended up playing baseball or basketball. I just
Oh, wow.
ran, and yeah, kind of the rest was history.
Okay. So what were your events in cross country and track? Like what did you do?
So I did all the distance events. So in high school, mainly 2 mile and mile, and then I ended up running in college at the University of Illinois and
Oh, wow.
ran cross country there and did the 5K outdoors, the 3K indoors. Um, and then by the time I finished college, I was ready to do some ultras, do some different, and I've fallen in
Right.
love with trail running since then.
That's awesome. Well, I got to ask, do you remember what your high school mile time was?
My best mile in high school was 4:14, I believe.
Oh my gosh, a 4:14. That's insane, dude.
Thanks.
Wow. I just can't believe the times like high schoolers are running nowadays. I mean, I don't know how long ago that was for you, but that's just I remember, my wife ran track in high school and she did hurdles, but she also did 400-meter and she did a mile. And I think her best was maybe like, she wasn't really fast, but she was in like the high sixes or the low sevens. And I've talked to other people that have been in the sixes. And nowadays it just seems like if you're not running sub fives in high school, like you're slow, which is crazy to think. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, it is even since I graduated high school in 2013, and it is like way faster now. It's crazy.
It's just ridiculous. What was your
College
two
as
miles?
well.
Yeah. What was your two
Um,
miles time?
I think it was 9:08 um,
Gosh.
in high school at least.
Yeah.
Faster in college, but yeah.
So what's your, since you ran the 5K outdoor in college, what was your fastest or what is your PR in a 5K?
My
I'm curious.
PR in college was 14:17.
Good Lord. I just can't that's insane. That's like most people's 2-mile time, you know? That's gosh. What led you to trail running? You just got kinda bored and wanted to try something different, or
Um,
what led you there?
yeah, I guess it's hard to say, like, when I really fell in love with it, because even in high school, we didn't have much. I was in the Chicago suburbs, but we had some parks, and it was just cool to, you know, it was always way cooler to be on trails than on the road, and, in college, it's just such a stringent training regimen. Um, and so, like, whenever there was a chance, like in between seasons or whatever, me and like the few other guys that like to run trails, we would drive out and run some trails. And by the end of college, not that I didn't really enjoy my experience running in college, but because it's kind of one of those things you'll never get to do again. To like wake up at
Right.
6 a.m. every morning and run with your best friend, your 20 best friends,
Right.
do an impossible track workout that I could never, get myself to do, by myself today. Um, but yeah, I was just so ready to like get away from the times and the, hitting this split and just run for the sake of running.
The joy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, I'm curious, back in college when you're running, on the team, what kind of mileage and volume were you doing, like, weekly?
the highest I ever did, I did it 100 miles a week a little bit,
Wow.
but I ended up finding, and part of this was just being an engineer. Just I was just so busy with the traveling and everything. It seemed like around 80 or high 70s was what worked best for me. So I think when I ran my most of my PRs, I was closer to 80, which still is a
Wow.
lot, but
Yeah, it
um,
is.
but uh, I mean, not as much as the highest I had done, I guess.
That's just crazy to think of, like, a college athletes doing, 100-mile weeks just as the norm, or even 80. I mean, I think I've only done 100-mile week in my entire running career, and then I think I did 80 once, but most of mine were in that 40, 50, maybe 55 miles, but that's just crazy to think of that at, like, 80 as, like, an easier week.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Man,
mean, it's like, yeah, we definitely like put a lot into it in college, and I'm sure kids, just as much today, but um it's funny like when I hear parents like being like, "Oh, can my kid like get a scholarship or whatnot?" But it's like, I don't know, if you're just doing it for the money, like you could probably just get a job and like spend less
yeah.
time for the amount of, yeah, I guess college
Right.
has gotten pretty expensive, but it's a lot of work. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
I guess to get a scholarship running, you've probably gotta be crazy
yeah,
fast to
and
get at least
that's
to
not
a
to
D1
mention that,
school.
yeah, like most scholarships in running are not full ride either. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Gosh.
Mm.
Well, you mentioned that you wanted to try some ultras. So when did you do your first ultra marathon and what was it?
So I think I had signed up for one like a month after graduation, but I got like too excited and I hurt myself a few
Oh,
times.
no.
And then I think the first 50K I entered, I actually tore a tendon in my perineal. So it wasn't the greatest start. So I think my first
Oh, no.
official ultra finish wasn't until the January after I had graduated in the spring. It was the South Mountains Marathons 50K in North
Okay.
Carolina, which
Yeah, I've heard of
was
that one.
gorgeous course. Yeah, and it was awesome, but definitely harder than I expected. I was ready to
Yeah.
just like hammer my first ultra, and I was pretty beat up after that.
Well, what
Yeah.
what time I guess it was the 50K you ran, so what was your time at the South Mountains 50K?
I don't remember the time. I know it was a course record. It was a good race,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's since been broken. I think it
Yeah.
was in the 420s or so. That course got a lot
Gosh.
of vert. So,
Yes, it does.
um, yeah.
That's
Um,
challenging.
yeah.
So you said it was a lot more difficult than you had, like, kind of envisioned. Were there any moments where you were, like, something big went wrong or you bonked, ran out of nutrition, hydration, something like that?
Well, I think I was having some pain in my hip flexor and maybe my foot too. I can't even remember, but I just remember thinking like, because I had these dreams of doing it 100, and here I was, I'd already been injured in my first attempt at an ultra, and then now I'm like, you know, barely making it through a 50K. And I think there was even a moment where I was like, if this continues to get worse at this rate, I might not finish again. And
Oh
it was
wow.
just kind of humbling to think like, how do people do 100 if, you know, I'm already hurting this much, after 20 something miles.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what happened in the first race where you tore your was it the peroneal brevis tendon in the ankle?
It was one of the perineal. I can't even remember. It was a partial
Okay.
tear, luckily, so it just healed on its own and hasn't been a problem. But I had done an unofficial ultra at the Burning River relay.
Oh,
So
cool.
during that, I guess I wore a different type of shoes that I normally wear, and I think it just like caused some tendonitis there. So I was starting the race on tendonitis, and
Okay.
it was in New Hampshire. It was like the most technical course like imaginable. And so every time I twisted my ankle, it was like getting worse and worse. And then one
Oh,
time it was like, okay, that is a sharp pain. That doesn't feel right. Um and sure enough, I had torn it. But
oh
yeah, yeah. But I guess
gosh.
maybe it was just a poor decision to start the race to begin with.
We've all done that. Started a race a little injured or a little niggle or something like that. It's yeah, we've all done
Yeah,
that.
but sometimes it
Yeah.
works out. I know you hear these stories. People, I've had friends,
Yeah.
they start a race injured, they run 100 miles, and then it feels better than it did.
That's crazy. Well, have you run 100? Because you mentioned you had wanted to. Have you run 100 since then?
Yeah, so in that first year, it was 2019 where I did the South Mountains 50K in January. I did all the distances up through
Okay, wow.
100. Um, and I did the Wasatch that year, which
Oh, okay.
I really, really, that was my first experience where I really like bonked hard and like
Oh no.
totally like had to, go to a dark place. And so then I did another 100 the year after at the Bear 100,
Oh wow,
and
that's a
it
good one. Yeah.
went it went better. And just I don't know, it's funny like hundreds. It's so arbitrary, like whether it's good or bad when you look at the result. But like I feel like
Right.
like and the Bear like satisfied me as like okay, I've done 100 now.
Nice.
So
Well,
yeah.
what in the Wasatch race? Because I know that's if I remember correctly, I think that's somewhere in like the what 23 to 26,000 feet of elevation gain, maybe
Yeah, yeah.
somewhere around there. Where do you remember about what point it was you really hit that low spot?
It was right at Lamb's Camp. I think it's like 45 miles. And from there to 60, I like turned it around. But then I had another even worse low at
Oh
like
no.
70-ish. And I still feel bad for the guy who was pacing me during that portion. He was actually one of the friends I kind of mentioned earlier that he would go run trails with me in college. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, so it was rough, but at least I
Well, what?
finished running. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you recall? Like, what got you out of that dark place? Like, what it was?
I just wasn't, I was so naive about the fueling, and I wasn't
Yeah.
fueling like it's crazy to think the difference. I fuel like 4 times as much calories per hour now than what I was doing back then. So I guess just my family and friends just being like, "Hey, you got to eat more." Like even them not being ultra runners, like it was so obvious that I wasn't eating enough.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. Well, so at the Bear, did you have any like dark, low moments there? Did that race just go pretty well overall?
I mean, for 100, I'd say it went pretty well overall. There was a period, it was the COVID year.
Okay.
And so I wasn't allowed to see crew as much. And I was much better fueling at this point. Um, um, I, but I really had gotten used to the gels that I liked. And there was a period where there's no way I could have carried enough gels of my own. So I started using what they had on course, and I kind of felt sick for a bit. But other than that, it was good. And I was running the climbs all the way to the finish.
Oh, wow.
So it was just such a empowering feeling to be like, I mean, at least not there are some climbs on that course. Obviously, it's in the Rocky Mountains that nobody runs
Yeah.
probably, but yeah, it was just such an empowering feeling, like being at past the point where Wasatch had went so poorly. I'm sure many people can relate to this. Like, in the past, you failed, and here I am feeling good still running up a climb in this
Yeah.
beautiful and you know like I said before, it's like arbitrary the result, but like to me, it was like that was a win. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was your finishing time, if you remember? I'm curious.
I think I was just under 21 hours, um,
Wow.
or just under 22. I think it was just under 21. And I think it was like
Either way, that's
2058
fast.
or something.
Because
Thanks.
the bear also has quite a bit of elevation. If I've never run it, but I
It
think that one has quite a
does,
bit.
but interestingly, like so much of it is more runnable than Wasatch, even though they're similar numbers.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, both courses were gorgeous and awesome, but Wasatch had some places late in the race where it kind of felt like they were like, "What's the worst way we can get down this mountain?" And like that's how the course
Let's
went.
just go straight down.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny. Well, what are those the only 200s you've run, or have you run more since then?
I haven't done 100 since. I'm sure I'll
Okay.
do one again, but yeah, I haven't done one since.
Well, since you've done most distances, it sounds like up to the 100, what's your kind of favorite preferred distance?
So it's like whatever I haven't done most recently. So like I
Okay.
just like to mix it up, and I never go a full year without training for like a mile or something. Like I'll do like a
Okay.
random like I don't know. I just think maybe it's because I was in college in high school, like in that stringent running for so long, always doing the same race that now it's like, I don't know, I'm not running for a living. It's just so great to be able to just do whatever the heck I want. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, when you were training for the bear, what kind of volume were you doing then? Was it similar to back in college or something a little different?
A little bit less. So David Roach, he's actually really famous now, so I'm
Oh
sure you've
yeah,
heard of him
I
after
know.
after
I just
last
saw him at
week.
Leadville.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You were out there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, I did see you posting pictures out there. That's cool. Um, yeah, well, he's been coaching me since before the bear. He's
Oh
probably a
wow.
big reason why I that one went so much better than Wasatch. But he's really big on one rest day per week, and he's helped me find kind of a nice balance and with like all the other things I have going on in my life. So um, I think usually I end up kind of in the 70s, but before the bear, maybe there were a few peak weeks up into like 90, but
Yeah.
mostly it's like around like 60, 70.
Well, I'm curious, does David have you doing much strength training, or is it a lot of volume and maybe some cycling, or well, like, maybe what's
Um,
an average week look like?
lately, so since I had a daughter last year, and
Oh, well,
um,
cool.
it was a little lower for a bit, and then I've kind of settled into most weeks I'm in the like high 60s type range.
Mhm.
But yeah, before a big race, I mean, just inevitably because I'll have some big long runs, like, there might be a weekend where I do like a 25-20 type thing. So yeah, those end up being bigger, but my normal weeks have still kind of been like in the high 60s, low 70s
Okay. And in
with
strength training at all in
oh yeah,
there, or
sorry, you asked about strength training. I do the mountain legs routine. I
oh,
do kind
okay.
of like a variation of that David Roach puts out. Um, and I do a little bit of pull-ups, push-ups, dips, just all body weight stuff because
Right.
I'm really big on like, well, one, I think just with for whatever reason with my body type, I can put on a lot of muscle really easily, like more than I want. So
Okay.
I try not to do too much lifting. Um, I'm not really like the super thin runner type that most of the college teammates I had were like. But the other reason is I I think it's so important in like a regular person's life who has like a full-time job and they're just kind of running in the morning or the evening, to have something that's quick and doesn't require a lot of equipment. Um,
Yeah.
because otherwise I'm gonna like miss a week and I'd much rather just be really consistent with it. But I have noticed since having a baby, like I don't need to do the pull-ups as much because like lifting a baby seems to be good core work.
Yeah. You're like, here, honey, I'll take the kid. I got to do some workouts. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
got
mean,
this.
shoot, I've done that before. I remember with some of my, I've got four, and with some of mine,
Okay.
you'd take them and hold them and just start doing some squats, holding the baby. It's a great
Yeah.
workout.
And they get bigger as they
I
go,
know,
so
right?
you get stronger.
Out of my daughter now, she's 5. She's about to be 6. She likes me to bench press her. She's like, Dad, bench press me. So she'll like lay across my arms. I'm like bench
I bet
press her.
that's
So
pretty
yeah,
tough.
it is because they like
Yeah.
they move and it's not like a barbell. It's very tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a core
Yeah,
workout too. Yeah.
I
That's
know.
funny.
Well, do you
Yeah.
have any other races planned at all this year?
So this year, every time I like have my eyes on a race, it seems like we have like a wedding to go to that day. Um, but because we're just kind of in that age, I guess. But um, I've signed up for Black Canyon 100K in February. So I'm
Nice.
really excited about that because I haven't done
That's
a
a
longer one in a while.
that sounds like one you could be pretty quick at because that's a faster course and it sounds like that would be a good one for you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. I did actually go out there in 2021 maybe. And I hurt my hip and
Oh
dropped
no.
out at 55K.
Oh
So
no.
I'm just, it's such a competitive race and I'd love to just like be up there and compete and
Yeah.
finish feeling, at least healthy relatively for 100K, get some redemption. So
Yeah, well, that'll be exciting to see how you do there because, like you said, that's a very stacked field. I mean, it's a golden ticket race, so there's a lot of fast people there, and it'd be fun to kind of compare yourself.
yeah, yeah. And like, I'm not even, I don't really have dreams of getting a golden ticket, but it's just, going to a race that has a golden ticket is so fun because it
Right.
just makes the whole field amazing, whether you're going for the golden ticket or not.
Yeah,
Um,
the
and
atmosphere is just awesome.
yeah, and that's what's so cool about like all these new things in our sport. It just like makes it for you don't even have to be a person going for a golden ticket, but it just like creates all these opportunities for people to sign up for these awesome races with a
Yeah.
really exciting field.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, good luck to you on that race. Well,
Thank you.
let's shift gears now over to the Ohio to Erie Run Club. Basically, tell people what it is, how you kind of came up with the idea. I mean, basically, it's a run club. From my understanding, I've looked at a couple of news articles and read some stories. Looks like you got it into the prison system in Lebanon, Ohio, and prisoners can kind of run now in the yard and complete these distances, and it just sounds really cool. So let's tell me more about it and kind of how you came about this idea.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, like you said, it's a running club in the prison at Lebanon. Um and yeah, so I kind of had it's not an original idea. I read about a program in a Runner's World magazine article, I think when I was in high school or something out in Oregon. And I just thought it was such a cool idea because at least for me, our team in high school, we really like kept each other out of trouble. We were known for like, you know, that kind of thing. And I just always thought about, especially like growing up in Chicago, where like there's parts of Chicago where, if you grow up in this neighborhood, your odds of ending up in prison are so high. And
Oh
like
wow,
it
yeah.
doesn't take, you know, a a genius to be like, well, you know, that probably doesn't mean all those people in prison are bad people. It's just like they're a product of
Right.
their environment and whatnot. And so when I heard about this running program, I was like, oh, I bet that would be such a good way for these guys to maybe turn things around. Um, and then also prove to their families and themselves and maybe like employers after they get out that like, hey, I'm capable of being a positive member of society. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know, running is just so good for that. And so I thought that was so cool. And then in college, I think it was my sophomore year, one of my professors on the first day was just introducing himself and talking about the class. And then he was like, oh, and by the way, I also do this thing where I teach a college course at a prison that's about 30 minutes away.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, whoa, that's cool. So I actually went up and asked him about that program. And he said that I could, get involved. And so um, it at first I was just like helping him with materials, but once I did a fifth year and got my master's degree, and
Oh,
as a
wow.
graduate student I was allowed to actually go out to the prison as well. And so I would go and I tutored for guys writing essays, but also I was an engineer, so they had a math class, and they were so excited because they didn't have a lot of volunteers that were engineers, so that
Ah, okay.
I just like felt like I was able to help, which was cool. Um,
Yeah.
but they knew I was on the track team, so they would always also be like, "Hey, I'm trying to get into running," like, and they shoot ideas past me, and I was surprised because at that point I had never coached before, but I had given advice like friends' parents would be like, "Hey,
Hmm.
like I know you're a runner. Like, what shoes should I get, or what should
Yeah.
I do about this pain I'm having?" You don't think about like all this knowledge that we gain through our experiences, and like being a college athlete, I felt like I was like given a lot of knowledge about running that I didn't even really think about. Um, and hearing some of their questions, it was like, oh man, like this would be even more of an impact than I thought, because like I didn't really think about the fact that in prison, they don't really have access to the resources of information that we have,
Right.
especially today where it's like so easy to just look up something on your phone. Um, and I was like, some of these guys just have like the total wrong ideas about like diet and training. So like not only will it help for all the real reasons I wanted to start the program, but like there's a real value in us like coming in and giving them advice that they kind of need if
Yeah.
they're going to go after these goals. Um, and so then finally, when I kind of got settled in my job after college, was when I reached out to, um, and I reached out to Lebanon and Warren Correctional, which were like the two closest prisons. Um,
Okay.
and it just so happened that at Lebanon, there was a guy by the name of Corey Krabby, who he's an employee there, and he's a big runner. And
Okay.
someone showed him the email and they were like, oh my gosh, like this would be such a good idea. And I don't know if at Warren a similar thing happened and they just didn't want to take the time or whatnot. But like, I know that these prisons, they're like really short staffed. So if that
Yeah,
was the
definitely.
case, I wouldn't blame them at all. But Corey kind of had to like volunteer, like as part of in part of my time, I'm going to make sure that this happens and work through all the logistics, because there's like a million logistics with this kind of
I can
thing.
imagine.
Yeah, and it's taken more than just him, but he's kind of orchestrated making it happen. Um, and yeah, he kind of knew my name through like running circles, luckily, like 'cause the Cincinnati running community is pretty small.
Yeah.
And now I know we have like a bunch of mutual friends. Um, but yeah, if it wasn't for that, it never would have happened. And then it just so happened that that was also COVID time, so we got delayed in getting started.
Oh
But
no.
this is our third summer that we've been doing practices, and the reason we're called the Ohio to Erie Run Club is there's this route across Ohio called the Ohio to Erie. It goes from downtown Cincinnati to downtown Cleveland, so
Oh, okay.
diagonally across the state. And it's from the Ohio River to Lake Erie, is why it's called that. But
Ah,
it's
okay.
326 miles. And
Oh, wow.
so we have the goal for all the members of our program that if they complete 326 miles, which is 815 laps of the prison yard
Oh,
while they're at
wow.
Lebanon, then we'll raise money for a charity of their choice.
Oh,
And
cool.
so we've now had four guys that have completed it. And we're midway through our third year. So it's been really cool. And then we also do races about
I saw
once a
that.
month. Yeah, and I guess I don't know if it'll always be once a year, but the last 2 years, last year was the first year, and we're about to have our second one. Um, we have a race where members who aren't regular volunteers, because volunteering, it is difficult, right? You have to go out. We practice every week, but like we don't expect our volunteers to show up every time. But I do say, like, unless you're going to come like once a month or twice a month, then you're not really going to build the support system with the guys. So
Right.
as much as I'd love to, give you the experience of like getting to see what our program is like, that's not really worth it for the prison's resources to like get you cleared and background checked and everything. But this race is an opportunity for people to like come in, and it's also an opportunity for the guys. I mean, that's obviously the main reason. They get a little taste of what the running community is like, because when we do our races in the prison, it still kind of feels, unfortunately, like a practice. But
Okay.
when we had that race where the people came from the outside, just like the buzz in the air and everything, it just felt like when you go to a real race. Um, and it was just so exciting, and it clearly meant so much to the guys. But then the other cool thing for me, and this has always been the case, just seeing the impact it has on the volunteers, but also on those people that came in just like for that 1 day pass to do the race. It's just so cool to like see how it changes their perspective. And they're like, people always ask like, oh, what is it like? Like, and it's like, it really just feels like you're at a run club. Like, it's
Oh, that's
no
awesome.
different. They're just guys,
Yeah.
that happened to do something that was really, really bad at one point. But I mean, it really does just feel like you're running with a bunch of guys. So
That's awesome.
it's cool to see people's perspective change when they come in.
Well, I'm curious, like I saw the race. Is it the Queen Bee? Is that the race that you do where outsiders can come in?
Yeah. So, okay. So Queen Bee is like a fall race in Cincinnati, and they have a half
Okay.
marathon and a 4 mile. And so that's the other thing. We do a 4 mile race, but for the guys in the prison, last year, the race organizers gave them entry into the virtual race.
Oh,
And
cool.
what was really cool was they like crushed it. We had the guy who won and like a bunch of guys in the top 10. But it's so cool. Like they could show up in the results and like show their family, like, look what I did. Cause a lot of these guys have families that keep in touch with them, but
Yeah.
it's one thing like, hearing from you, like, I did so great, but I think what I've noticed is when they have something else to like show their family, like, look, like this run club is posting about this race I completed. Um, it just like means so much more to their family, because it's like somebody else is vouching for the great
Right.
work that they've done.
A lot of
Which,
pride in that.
yeah, I mean, it sounds so simple, but like most of these guys haven't like had like a good performance review or a high five or like anything since they were like 18. And so
Yeah.
like I think their families still believe in them, but like I'm sure that means a lot.
Yeah. So how many people at the last race like came in from the outside and competed in this race in the prison?
I think we cleared 15. Um,
Wow.
so and we're looking for like a similar number again this year. Um, yeah,
And I'm
so
assuming they all have to have like background checks to go in and all this stringent process probably to be cleared.
yeah, but it's a lot easier than it seems like than being cleared for the full-time volunteering.
Okay.
It seemed like it went a lot quicker. Um, and it's all done through the prison. You just have to sign like a couple forms. I'd say the only thing that makes it, a little difficult is you can't just like sign up 3 days before. Like we have to
Right.
get the paperwork in like a couple weeks before.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So, but other than that, it's really actually, I was surprised, and how easy it was. And it was like, oh, we got to do this more often. But, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, what about the volunteers then? You said that's more difficult. What's that process to get somebody like vetted to come in, weekly?
it's the same thing where you just sign a bunch of paperwork, for the most part, but the the approval of it seems to take a lot longer. It's usually like on a few months time frame instead of like a couple weeks. Um, and I don't have visibility to like what the background check is
Okay.
actually like. Um, but I mean, it's mainly just like they want to make sure like you don't have like an inappropriate relationship with someone in the prison. And then I think there's like certain crimes that make you not allowed to be a volunteer at a prison. Um,
Hmm.
so like if someone had like a criminal background
Right.
record, um, depending on what they did, it could be a problem as well.
Probably don't want somebody that might have had a conviction for like being a drug mule, coming into a
Yeah,
prison.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be yeah
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I was curious, like, because I've put on races before, not in a prison system, but in just even in a city, and dealing with the permits required for that, and the approvals you have to get from, maybe it's city council or mayor or police or fire and EMS involved, and I just it sounds like getting something approved, even just your weekly run club at in a prison system. And this isn't, from what I read on one of the articles, this is a medium security prison. I think it was like a level 2 or a level 3 prison, so it's not a max and it's not like a minimum security. It just seems like that would be so daunting and challenging to even like approach someone with this idea to get it approved. I mean, like, did it have to go, I'm assuming, to like a warden? I mean, generally, I think like the governors are involved in prison systems. So, like, do you have any idea how high like your run club had to go to get approval for this?
Definitely by the warden. I don't think it was any higher than that, but yeah, it's definitely really. So there's several, I think, other run programs that are going on now, but whether it's a run program or an educational program, yeah, the hardest part is just yeah, exactly what you said. It's just like so daunting to get these approved. Um, but I will say, like, it doesn't hurt to ask. Like, it was really not a big deal for me because I just,
Yeah.
typed up what I thought the program would look like, why it would make an impact in an email, and I just sent it. And, Warren didn't respond. Okay, no sweat. But Lebanon did. Awesome. Like, and then I just waited a long time because it took a really
Yeah.
long time. And that's kind of the case with like everything about our program too. Cause like, um, you know, the first thing we notice is okay, they don't have, good enough shoes. So we,
Yeah.
we
I
got to
was
get these
wondering
guys
about that.
shoes.
Yeah.
And for the first year, we used donation money. Um,
Okay.
but we actually got Fleet Feet in Cincinnati. They donate the shoes that people return but are still in good condition. Like they're like basically brand new shoes,
Okay.
but someone returned them. They can't sell those, and they donate them to us. They've actually been doing this for a while with a different program for recovering drug and alcohol addicts. Um, City Gospel Mission, I believe it's called. They've been donating to that program for a while, I think.
Okay.
But we have requirements on like they have to be like black, white, or gray shoes. So they've
Oh,
been saving like the black, white, or gray ones for us. And we really don't require that many shoes. So, but it's still like that cost like adds up a lot.
absolutely.
So
Shoes are
that
expensive.
has been game changing because now it's like, okay, we can let more people in our program because we like I didn't want to like let a bunch of people in our program and be like only like a quarter of you get shoes. Um,
Right.
and there's like a huge wait list because one of the inmates in our program started a inmate led program on all the other days of the week.
Is that
Um,
clutch?
yeah, that's Clutch. So
Okay.
so Clutch, he transferred to a lower security prison um, after our first year, but that program was huge because that program, his inmate led program, just took off. There's hundreds of
Wow.
runners in it, and pretty much all of them, from what I understand, want to be in our program. And so um, now we have this system where like guys vouch for guys in that program and they'll be like, hey, this guy's been working his butt off. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure. Like we want him in our
Yeah.
program. And so we get these guys that are already really motivated when they come in, which is so cool. Because the first year started off and like nobody had ever, well, that's not true, but a lot of them, I'd say that almost all of them had never really run before,
Okay.
which is,
It-
different now.
yeah. Now, so how many, you said there's a wait list for your run club there in Lebanon. How many are in the run club like every week that come to or that go
It's
to these
somewhere in the
practices?
20, like mid 20s. Now with Lebanon being a level 3, um, there's often like lockdowns and whatnot. So it's
Yeah.
very common that we won't have the full group out at
Okay.
practices. But yeah, somewhere in the mid 20s.
And so these practices take place, I'm assuming you said in the prison yard. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is inside the barbed wire or whatever there may be. And now are there, like you mentioned, the prison resources involved, like probably providing, is there like a guard that's in there with you, or is it just like maybe up on the walls, or kind of maybe explain the environment to people?
Yeah, so there's actually a few guards that'll be out there. Um, Now, there is usually like other sports going on.
Okay.
So like we're running the outside of the yard, but there'll also be like guys playing like football or softball in the middle a lot of the time. When we do our race, where the people come from the outside, it's usually just us.
Okay.
Um, but but on a normal day, yeah, there's like other guys out there that aren't in our program. Um, and yeah, one of the things where the resources get us is in the winter, we'd still be down to go out and run, but overall, most guys would just want to like play in the gym, like in the basketball gym when it's
Yeah.
winter. So at other prisons, they're outside all year round, but Lebanon, I guess, just like being a little bit higher security and not having the resources to cover um, both places, we actually shut down in the winter. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
one bummer about the program is, you know, it's, maybe a nice break for the volunteers who are driving out to Lebanon, all the time. But for the guys in the program, um, they unfortunately like can't really run outside from October to April. And so
Right.
they lose quite a bit of fitness that way.
Yeah, and I was looking and doing some research at an article from a news station up there in Cincinnati. I think it's WCPO ABC.
Hmm.
And one of the things in that article I found interesting was at their request, they requested the prison's public information officer to review the disciplinary records, and they found that almost all of those participating in this run club showed improvement in their disciplinary record in the prison. So it's like, I mean, I could see how the prison would want this, if it's giving inmates an outlet for, we all know running is a cathartic release at times. You get those endorphins flowing, you're getting your blood pumping and getting the great benefits from that. Maybe it's releasing some pent up aggression potentially that an inmate may have, and it's, helping them have better times in the prison and reducing that violence possibly. So that's really neat to see that, it sounds like not even just making an impact in those inmates' lives, but you mentioned that if they complete it, you will raise money to a charity of their choosing. So then the inmates have a way to like affect change in someone else's life as well, which I think that's got to be pretty impactful for them.
Yeah, yeah, that was kind of the idea because it's just um, like I think a lot of them want to do something that's good, but they don't really have the opportunity, and
Right.
so it's just cool for them to be like, oh, like I can do something that matters on the outside while I'm in here, um, and that seemed to be really motivating for them.
Yeah. And you said there's been, was it four that have completed the full 326 miles?
Yeah, yeah. The fourth one, Salik, he finished on the day that news source was in, which was kind of awesome. It was like
Nice.
perfect timing. But yeah,
Yeah. And so Clutch, one of the articles I read, he was the first one to complete it. Is that correct?
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
And so he runs the other run club in the lower security prison. Is that right?
So he started the inmate led program at Lebanon. Now yeah, he runs, and I think he's gotten some. I keep in touch with him still a little bit, and I know he's still been running out there at his uh lower security prison. Um, he just fell in love with it, and he was not a runner before he started. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was just cool to see the impact that it had on him.
And
I think.
so, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think he'll be a runner for life, which is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. So with the run club, is it weekly that it meets, I guess, in the yard? Do you go in weekly?
Yeah, so it's Wednesday. So I'm actually about to head there after work today,
Oh, cool.
um, but it's Wednesday evenings, and we meet at just before 5 so that like people can, who have normal working hours can get out there. Most people have to leave a little early on Wednesdays. Um, but uh, but yeah, we meet at 5 every Wednesday. We do have quite a few weather cancellations, and I'll miss weeks all the time when I have things going on.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I try to get out there every week that I can, and luckily we have just like an awesome group of volunteers that um, I miss all the time, and the program only gets better when I'm not there.
Well, how many volunteers do you think on average are there like every week? Maybe not the
um,
same person, but how many
yeah,
on
I'd say on average it's probably like 6.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty good. Um,
Great
maybe
ratio.
yeah, yeah, it's a good ratio for sure. Like the guys all have people to run with, and we kind of mix it up on Wednesday's usually the hard day in their training, and so we mix it up where like every other Wednesday we'll just do like a run, like a progression run where we can just like talk with them and catch up,
Okay.
hear how they're doing. And then every other Wednesday we'll do interval workouts.
Nice.
And it's good to have like the volunteers because not all of them have watches. And we'll do I guess they're not really intervals, they're more like repeats. Because we just found it works better in the prison, like with not everyone having watches and whatnot. We'll like
Right.
do a repeat, and then like we'll kind of break it up into like groups of speed. Like it just kind of naturally happens, and we'll make sure there's like a volunteer in each group, and like in between the repeats we're like high-fiving and stuff, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's 815 laps to get 326 miles. So I'm not an engineer, So
2.5 laps a mile.
2.5 laps. Okay, that's where I was
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Which is
Wow.
actually it's kind of weird, but it's actually nice because every it's a square and every straightaway is 0.1 miles. So it's
Ah,
actually
okay.
really easy to calculate like how long for a given distance because of that. The 2.5 kind of intimidated me at first, but I'm like, okay, we can work with this.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll often do workouts where it's like not even like a given distance. It's like two sides of the square. Like do 10 repeats of that, and that way
Okay.
it's like because rather than I feel like you have to adjust for like the environment you're in, and it's like okay, that's not really 400s, but it's close enough, and it works. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm curious, is there, like a website, Facebook page that if somebody is there a way for other volunteers and people to get involved, like, if they wanted to and kinda participate and help with this, program?
Yeah, the best ways would be to either just reach out to me on like any social media or we have a Facebook page, Ohio to Erie Run Club. Um, and yeah, if you reach out to that, that would be
Okay.
good as
Yeah.
well.
I've got
Yeah.
that pulled up. I was doing some looking over some of the posts. It's cool. I guess do you run that Facebook page?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
I see it looks
probably
like
need to
you.
have someone else run it because I'm not the best at it, but that's what we do for now.
That's cool. And now do you find, like, our family members going into this Facebook page and, like, cheering on runners, their loved ones?
Yeah, that's one of the coolest parts is um they're constantly reaching out and being like go, go Colin, like you're awesome. And then they'll like sometimes individually message our group and be like, my son is such and such, like this has had such a big impact on him. Thank you so much. And that's been really cool. Uh I think having that Facebook page is really cool for the guys because it's like one of the only ways that um, other than them reaching out that their families see updates about them, and also like I've heard when some of them do something good, they're like telling me like, oh yeah, like my mom was sharing it with like our whole family, and um, I don't know, it's just really cool to hear the impact that we can have just by, posting about the great work that they're doing.
Yeah, definitely, and, that article I mentioned earlier, the one from the ABC, there's some really good, uh, comments in there from I guess it was it Salik maybe you mentioned, or another one of the runners about how they're just, like, proud to do something, for good, in the prison,
Mhm.
and so do this running and just be involved, and it's like, they may have made I think one of the runners, might have even said that, that just because they made a mistake at one point when they were young doesn't mean they're a bad person, and, like, they can do this to do something good, and that's awesome that you took the effort to attempt something daunting like we said earlier and try to get this done and got it approved and in the system, and I don't know, maybe do you think now that you've been successful for, I think you said this is the third summer at Lebanon, that maybe have you tried to revisit with Warren anymore or just that initial time?
Well, so the thing is like in a perfect world, I'd love to reach out not only to Warren, but um, to maybe like a women's prison or like make this more of like a widespread thing. But you know, I, I struggle to like keep up with this
I
already.
could imagine.
And
Yeah.
so it's like one of those things where it's like I could try and make this program better or try and like have like a less good program that affects more people. And I don't know what the right answer is, but
Yeah.
right now I feel like um, the best answer for me is to just try and do my best at Lebanon. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, like if anyone who had the time wanted to, make this a bigger thing, I would love it. Because I think that every prison could benefit from this. And the other crazy thing is, and I didn't really fully realize this when we started, like I said, Lebanon just happened to be kind of close by, and Corey Krabby made it happen. But Um, Lebanon's kind of like not the easiest place for this. Like you said, it's a level 3 prison, and I think they mentioned this in the article. But like, um, most of the guys in this prison have like struggled at other prisons.
Right.
Um, from what I understand, from what I've been told. But so the fact that it works at Lebanon means that like it would be a million times easier at a level 1 prison.
Right.
And I know that there have been a lot, other prisons, even one in Ohio. Someone reached out to me and said up in Northeast Ohio, there's a program that they're doing where they run it. I think it's just so much easier for, I imagine, for them to get approval for things like, shoes and like getting pictures. Cause like that's one thing, like it'd be so great to like have pictures to post to the guys, but
Yeah.
so that their families could see that. But there's rules around all this stuff, and um, it's a lot of work for the prison, and they're risking their jobs by like
Right.
approving. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of optics on that, I'm sure, from higher in the prison system, kind of watching, seeing how this goes, make sure it does run smooth, because it only takes one time for something to go wrong to kind of put a
right.
shut down on everything. So I'm sure it's watched on multiple levels.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said that you're getting ready to come up with the next race, right? It's coming up in the prison with the outsiders. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so when is that? When does that come up?
Yeah, so it's on October 6th, and the information to apply, you just have to fill out a few questions like your name and like just some very basic information um, to apply to do the race. Um, it is on our Facebook page.
Okay.
Um, and we are still looking for more runners to do that. Um, but yeah, that's October 6th. It's a 4 mile race. And I can just say from last year, every single person that did the race was like, this is the best race I've ever signed up. Like people that have done all these cool ultras, they were like, I'm going to remember this experience, more than like a lot of any of those others.
Right.
Cause it's just so cool and gives you so much hope to like see what these guys, you know, society is like completely given up on them. And yet they're still like trying to, reach some running goals and like turn it around. It's so cool. It
Yeah.
just it just
Well,
makes you want to be like, man, I can get up at 5 a.m. and go crush my run easily. Like if they
right.
can do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious too. So if you meet Wednesdays in the evening at like 5-ish, how much time do the inmates have to run? Like, is there a daily exercise time where they're allowed to go out and like train? Or I think I saw some of the inmates in one of the articles mentioned like they were doing maybe 25, 30 miles a week, perhaps.
So at the most, there are some that are, but then there's others that they're involved in school and they have jobs and they struggle to get outside of a run. And unfortunately, I've even heard of like others that they just like, oh, during my rec period, there's a lot of fights, and I don't really like want
Uh,
to, I have this good thing going in our run club, and I don't want to like, get caught up in a fight and then not, I've
right.
heard things like that. So it's very hit or miss. Some of the guys train a lot outside of the group, and some of them just a little. Um, but clutch they all do technically have a rec period during the day that some of them can or can't go to, if they have like a job or whatnot. But then there's
Okay.
also that inmate led program that Clutch started. um, they meet in the evenings as well, and the reason he wanted to start that was so that there was a way for them to get their runs in at 5.
Okay.
Because like guys like Clutch that like actually completed the whole, you know 326 miles, like that takes a lot of running. So, especially he did it all in the first year. So, um, given like the weather constraints, the time constraints, it is hard for them to get out there for sure.
Yeah, not be able to run in the wintertime, and I imagine their rec
Yeah.
time's probably maybe an hour, so you're trying to
Yeah.
squeeze all these laps into this short time. it's a big commitment on their part to do it for sure. And it's cool to see them striving to do it and getting that motivation. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and like not to mention like too like 5, like that's after their dinner time and
Oh,
like there's like constraints on like when they can shower. I think level 1 it's a lot, a lot more freedom, but in a level
okay.
3 it's like the things you don't think about, like you don't want to run if you can't shower, and then you got to go to
Right.
sleep a lot, especially when it's really hot. So yeah,
That's
there's
a
a
good
lot of
point.
things like that. Yeah, actually, another scratch the bars, and they make the drink as well,
Oh, right.
scratch.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so they've given us a discount on their bars, and the the reason we got into that is, at the beginning we were given like a mixture of different types of bars, and we come to find out that like once they get in their cell and we practice in the evenings, they don't really have a chance to drink water. And
Oh,
so
wow.
like some of like the other bars, that I think are really good, but I never think about like not being able to drink water with them.
Right.
They were like, they dried out my mouth, and like all night I was just like waiting to drink water.
Oh,
And so for
gosh.
whatever reason, the scratch bars, they just love the taste and they don't dry out their mouth. So it's like if we bring in anything else, they're like, no, 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 we want the scratch bars. you know? So
Oh,
so
man.
so we're like, scratch, you gotta like give us a discount again. And luckily they've continued to support us. But yeah,
Yeah. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
Constraints you
even
don't
think about
think
it.
about.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Literally, you don't
Yeah.
think about not being able to drink water. Like that's
Right.
gosh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Man. Well, Alex, that's awesome, man, that you have taken the time and donated your own time to this effort, gotten people involved, and really does sound like you're making a huge impact on these people's lives, and they're in turn impacting other people's lives. So it's just awesome to see, and hopefully, maybe some other listener out there might be inspired by your story and this program, and who knows, maybe they'll reach out to you and try to get some information on how they could start a program similar in their own state, wherever they may be. So that would be awesome to see this spread amongst more prison systems, like you said. I think they could all benefit from it.
Thanks so
Well,
much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And yeah, you're giving me a lot of credit, but like without like Corey and the volunteers, like this program would be nothing like what it is. So I'm really
yeah,
lucky. Yeah.
definitely everybody that's volunteered and been a part of this is heroes in my book. That's pretty awesome. So, what's next on the horizon? Are there any other than this race coming up in October? Is there anything big on the horizon? I know you got your race in February, but anything big for the Ohio Erie Run Club that we can kind of check on the Facebook page?
That's a good question. We're trying to, I guess the next thing we're trying to add a banquet at the end of the year. Um, I've been focusing on getting the race ready, but the guys have been asking for this, and where their families can come in and like we'll like
Oh, wow.
kind of recap their year. I think that would be really cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, the blessing and the curse of the club is that, um, we get all these guys and they do all this great work, and then they get transferred to a lower security prison because they're doing so awesome. So we have a lot of turnover for good reason. They're always going
Yeah.
somewhere better, um, but yeah, that makes that kind of stuff hard. But I just love to like get more races, and maybe one day have like a longer race. If we can like find a way that they can, more of them can train more consistently, that would be so cool. Or like if like somehow we got approval to train in the winter, um,
Yeah.
I could see like having a half marathon or something. That would be
How
so
cool would
cool.
that be? Yeah, that'd be so
Yeah,
awesome to have like a prison yard marathon or half marathon.
yeah, yeah,
That'd be pretty awesome.
yeah.
Well, Alex, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this story. Like I said, I think it's very inspiring just to hear, and so I appreciate you telling the tale and sharing everything about it. And to everybody, I would just encourage you to go to the Facebook page, check out the information there if you want to get involved at all, or maybe reach out to Alex. I'm sure he'd appreciate any more volunteers that might be able to donate some time. So thank you again, Alex. I appreciate it. It's been great chatting with you. All right.
Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed this episode of The Adventure Jogger, please consider joining our Patreon and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok for more content like this. Without your continued support, we would not be able to produce this type of content. So thank you so much to everyone that has listened, followed along, subscribed, liked, commented, you name it, donated on Patreon. Thank you.